If it's your first Ramadan, as much as, sometimes it doesn't work to give blanket advice because everybody's got a different situation, but if possible, I think spending it with the community as much as possible is nice, right? Is good. If your masjid is having iftar, go to the iftar. If your masjid is having prayer programs, go to the prayer programs. If the masjid is having, classes even during the day, go to the classes. Because fasting for a convert can be very lonely. And it's more lonely if you're not taking advantage of everything that the local community has to offer. And that is obviously assuming that the local community is welcoming and not problematic and things like that. So try as much as you can to lean into the community aspect of Ramadan during Ramadan. That's also the time when a lot of these relationships are formed and bonds are formed. It's kind of like a lower barrier to make the sort of relationships that you kind of need to make. Converts, we're really heavy on like instructing converts, like do this and don't do that. And my observation is that converts usually have a higher need for social support, right, and emotional support than information per se. Everyone's different, but in general. And so sometimes outside of Ramadan it can be difficult because everybody's got their schedule and everybody's got their cliques and everybody's got their kind of people they're used to hanging out with. But in Ramadan those barriers get lowered. Right? People are hanging around the masjid more. People are open to different sorts of social engagements in a different way. And so Ramadan can be the beginning of new friendships. Ramadan can be the beginning of new sort of social circles, and that's a really important thing. The other thing I would say is to try to spend as much time with the Quran as possible, and I mean reading it in your primary language, right? It's not going to be sustainable to worship Allah in the way that Allah wants without knowing who Allah is. That's just the end of it. So one of the most urgent things, if we are going to talk about instruction, one of the most urgent projects for a convert is to understand who Allah is. And if you understand or get a decent understanding of who Allah is, it can carry you quite far, right? That's your bedrock. I wouldn't suggest getting too caught up in the extreme, minutiae or the specifics of the Islamic law about this detail or that detail or the moon sighting wars or this. There's a million issues that kind of are like revolving controversies. Even things about like how high our pants should be, or how exactly what types of covering or what you're doing in prayer. It's a mistake for converts to let their attention be diverted to these sorts of things when they do not have a sustainable and profound understanding of who Allah is. That takes priority. You need to understand who Allah is. If you do not understand who Allah is, you are not going to last as a Muslim. It's not going to happen because there's too much stuff that you have to go through. There's too much opposition that you're going to find in society. There's too much social stigma, all these sorts of things. You're not going to last if you're not doing it for Allah, and you have to understand who Allah is. And one of the ways of doing that is by getting very close to the Quran.